All right, so welcome everybody in the room that's here on Isle of Man at Launchpad here in Douglas. And I know there are people that are dialing in from Sri Lanka and the UK, parts of, I think, of London, parts of New York City, possibly California as well. So thanks everyone for coming in. My name is Hazel Alvarado, and we are going to say one thing, keeping this a non-commercial event. Much thanks to Launchpad for hosting this event, doing the graphics, doing the live stream for us, as well as BCS Isle of Man section and Code Club, and obviously Kenny from Twisted Comics. So Kenny Diack, this is your AMA. Ask me anything. I am just going to hand it over to you so you can introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Hazel, and thank you all for coming along. It's great to see many faces that I know and some new faces. So this is my first time talking live, if you want, for Twisted Comics, so bear with me, but I'm really looking forward to it. I'm just grateful that you all came along. So before the questions, Q&As, I wanted to give a quick introduction to myself, like who I am, just spend 2 minutes talking about my story to where I am, and then I won't go into too much detail, but from that, you can probably ask me some questions if you want. So first up, my name's Kenny. I'm from the Isle of Man. I'm 44. I'm here with my wonderful wife, and we're expecting our child in January, which is wonderful. My story of how I got into Twisted Comics would be starting off from school. I wasn't really made for school, I would say. I struggled at school. I failed all my exams. I didn't really have any interest in actual education, I guess, when I was at school. But I was really interested in people. So I was really interested in getting to know people, doing social activities, and playing football or just playing in the school ground, I guess. When I was at school, even though I failed all my exams, I would interestingly succeed at like extracurricular activities. So for Young Enterprise, I would do very well. Or there was an opportunity to go sailing, I'd go sailing. And I would get really high grades in things which weren't official schoolwork, but high grades in the extra stuff I did. I enjoyed school so much when someone told me that I had to leave school. I just didn't want to do that. Getting a job scared the life out of me. So I just repeated a year of school on purpose, just to stay there an extra year, to kind of hang out with people and fail all my exams again, basically. So after that, I then went to get a job in the Isle of Man. I went traveling. And when I was 27, I became quite tired of life, I guess. I found things very boring in life, very difficult. I wasn't doing anything I enjoyed. So I went to university. But at university, I found I could do something that I was interested in. And I excelled at university if I wanted. So I went to Liverpool Hope University, then Bath University to do my postgraduate in marketing. And for whatever reason, I went from a student who failed to a student who excelled. And purely that was because I was focusing on the things that I wanted to do, the things that interested me. So I worked out in my life, if I was interested in something, I could do very well at it. If I'm not interested, I'm just terrible at it. So when I came back from university, I then got a job at PokerStars. It was a great job, great career. It paid me a lot of money. I went from being broke to, having a good salary. And then I got into comics I went to the Isle of Man, a Noah's Bakehouse, and I met a ton of students that had nothing to do, but they were creatives. And I kind of gathered them up. And I always had an interest in helping people. And I just said to them, what do you want to do? And they said, well, let's make a comic book. So I kind of acted as a producer to give them an opportunity to make a comic book. I worked with 3 schools in the Isle of Man. I went into the school and said to them, hey, why don't I make homework fun? I'll come up with a story. We'll come up with a story. We'll give that to the students. We'll ask you to do some concept art. Then we hired some additional students to change that concept art into characters. Then we put that in my first comic book. And then I went to London Comic Con with it, expecting the world to open up, but it didn't. But at London Comic Con, I met Neil, who founded Twisted Comics, and then I joined his company. And since then, we now have Black Mirror as a brand, and we create that comic book. And this is where we are today. So I try to keep that short. That's just a quick summary of who I am.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Thanks, Kenny. So the way that this is going to work is we are going to put a Slido QR code up And so everybody that's online, or if you don't want to ask the question in the room, you can scan that and type your question in. But we hope that if you are sitting in the room, that you can kind of shout your question out, or we'll bring the mic over to you. So we are going to start with a question that was pre-submitted. Kenny is aware of the background of this. Many of you in the room are probably aware of this, but for everybody that's online, Facebook seems to be the most engaging platform here. So there are groups here on the Isle of Man called What, Where, Who. There's different ones. And in one of those groups, someone had asked the question, I'm a creative, anonymous person. I'm living in the UK and I'm looking to come to the Isle of Man. And in response to that, I had seen that posted. I posted about our events, which generated conversation amongst people. And then that person actually reached out to me directly with his real name. And we had a great conversation about me also being a come-over. And he did ask, and I hope that he is online right now, so he should be online watching. I'm not going to put his name out there. But his question to you, Kenny, is as somebody coming from the UK in the creative industry, what experience do you think they should be ready for? What do you think that they should know before they come over here to explore moving to the Isle of Man?
Sure. Okay, so for anybody wanting to come to the Isle of Man within the creative industry, the first thing I would say, my involvement in the creative industry is the comic publishing world, if you want. So for me, I haven't actually got that much creative skill set within my body. Like I can't draw, I can't sing, but what I can do is I can work with teams to allow them to sort of develop their creative kind of industry and goals. So in terms of the experience I had, the Isle of Man was very good. For example, there's the Arts Council on the Isle of Man. So when I went to the Arts Council back in 2017 to say, I want to create this comic book, I was able to apply for a grant and they gave me the money to print off my first comic book. And they helped me in terms of approaching schools so I could get to know the right people and give some experience to schools, if you want. So from my point of view, what I say is really good for the Isle of Man is there is a network of creative people. You can easily find them. You get to know them very well via the kind of, like Launchpad, like Noah's Cafe, like whichever workspace you want to go to. And there are people on the Isle of Man that are incredibly creative as well and very skilled at what they do. So even though the Isle of Man has a small population, we have a very kind of skilled set of people on the Isle of Man, depending on what this guy wants to do, basically. What I would say for me personally, which helped me in terms of develop our business, I was very fortunate to meet a lot of people who are wealthy investors on the island as well. So I could approach people, you get to know them, you tell them about your company, and you're able to raise investment for what it is you want to do. The things I would say I would found difficult on the Isle of Man is with our company, look, I'm a big believer in trying to help people and give everyone an opportunity to succeed. So I'm always trying to involve people in the Isle of Man as well with part of the business. So for me, one of the problems our company had moving forward was we're probably, I don't want to say we're over generous, but we don't always make the right commercial choice, if you want. Maybe that's a failure of our company, but it's just a reality because we want to help people and provide opportunities. So for example, if I'm trying to find an artist to hire, it might be cheaper to go off island, for example. That's just the nature of the business. And it's always down to like what budget we have, who can we afford, and what can we do right now with the financial situation we're in. But the way I sort of tried to combat that as well, I found on the Isle of Man, there were a lot of people, and some of them are in this room, who are very skilled, Anthony, and other people. So we try to find people who can get involved also in the business side of it. So I can list 6 people that I've met in, workspaces like this, who have been involved in social media, business consultant, marketing. I've had all of my introductions to major clients, actually 90% of them through the Isle of Man, just meeting people in a work cafe, talking to them. So it's very, very good for networking, and it's very good for building relationships. So the type of businessman I am, if you want, I'll be honest, I like sleep. I do. I like sleep and I like relaxing. And I find in the Isle of Man, I can do that. because I live quite close to the cafes. So I can still get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Maybe not when we have our baby, but I can still get up quite late and then put in a good productive day and get home. So I often thought about, do I want to go to somewhere like London? And obviously, if I go there, there's going to be lots of opportunities to meet more people, but maybe my quality of life wouldn't be as good for me as an individual. So for me as an individual, I want to succeed, but I don't need to succeed right now, I guess. I can take things slowly, and I really value the home life as well. So for me to work efficiently and to work long term the best I can, I need my home to be stable. I need a good family life as well. And I can get that, I guess, in the Isle of Man. So it's more long term thinking, I guess.
Okay, that's great. So Kenny, if you want to do the QR code, we are going to put the QR code up so anyone online can ask a question, and I'll check to see it coming through. If you are actually watching this on the live stream on one of the live stream platforms, we are trying to look at the comments posting there. However, it would be a lot better if you could submit the question in Slido. But I am going to open it to the room. If anyone in the room has a question for Kenny. All right. Anthony? Oh, let me give you.
So, sort of a question, but based on the stories you've been able to tell me, I feel like you are pretty good at recognizing when there's luck in the room and like just grabbing it and like turning that into opportunity. So would love to hear more about, the story of how you landed the job at PokerStars, the story of how you landed the Black Mirror IP deal, and how you view sort of like when sort of luck, destiny, whatever presents itself.
Okay.
Yeah. How do you recognize it? And then just like, yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. So the first part was talking about how I landed my job at PokerStars, if you wanted, and taking the opportunity or the luck that presents itself. I guess that comes down to the nature of who I am. Like I like to find things out about people. I like to be prepared. So I'm always in every conversation, because I enjoy what I do, I'm always raising it in every conversation. Not to be boring. It's just, I just really enjoy talking about what I do. So after I finished university when I was 31, 32, I came back to the Isle of Man. I didn't really know what to do, if you wanted. I actually wanted to get a job in a cinema. So I graduated my postgraduate in marketing. I did rather well, but I wanted to just do something fun, basically. So I got into the habit of just trying to do something fun. I wanted to get a job in the cinema, but they just wouldn't employ me. So that's fair enough. And I got a job in, at the time it was called Oscars or Artisan, the bar in the Isle of Man. And I was a waiter, and I was enjoying life. I enjoyed that. But I also knew I was at that point of life where I was like struggling financially. And it's like, well, what do I do? Do I go to London? Do I stay on the Isle of Man? I just want to have a good life, if I'm honest, be happy with my family. And then one day, the executive team of PokerStars came into the bar, and I had done my research on the company in the Isle of Man. So I went to the table and just offered them, like, can I get you some shots of tequila, basically, just talking to them, how can I serve you? And then I was quite direct with them. I kind of sat down, I got to know them in a kind of friendly way. And I just said to them, I can improve your company. I said to them up front, you're doing these things I think are wrong, not in a way where I'm trying to be big-headed or try to justify it in a polite way. And the credit's on them, because they said to me, okay, this is interesting. What you said here made sense. Do you want to come up to the office and do a presentation for us about how we can improve? So yeah, I did see an opportunity there. I did sort of angle for that meeting. I was aware of it, but I was also confident about what I was telling them was good for them, basically. Like, I wasn't trying to go into that meeting trying to deceive them. I wanted to improve that company. So it was with a kind of honesty and integrity I approached the conversation. And when I went up to PokerStars, I presented in front of the executive team, and yeah, they just offered me a job on the spot. So I don't think for any job I've ever done, I've actually made a CV, being very honest with you. I will just try to find the people who I want to work with. I will then research their company, and I will go to them and present something which I think is valuable to them. It's also how I got into, that's how I got into university, basically, because I didn't have any grades. I just got on a plane, went to university. I researched the professor's name, and I met him for lunch. I didn't meet him for lunch. I sat outside his office, waited for him to walk past, and then asked him, could you introduce me to this person? And he was like, oh, that's me. I went, well, that's a shock, isn't it? And then he just took me for lunch, and we talked about his papers that he had written. And then he just offered me a spot in the course straight away. So it's unconventional what I do, but I was also aware that I had no qualifications. So it was the only way I could get to university, if you want. So yeah, so to answer your question, it is seizing an opportunity. But those opportunities are in this room right now. If you want, I promise you, if I was to sit and talk to anybody in this room, or if you were to speak to anyone in this room in terms of what you wanted from life, there would be someone in this room that can help you. And you've just got to go to them and just present who you are, present that you're a good person, and then seek out what that opportunity is, and then go to them with value and go to them with a desire to help that person. Like if I go to a room full of people and trying to, how can you help me? You're probably not going to get far, in my opinion. But if you can find ways to help other people, you will then find ways to how they will help you, I would say. Does that answer the question, or? Okay. I think I answered the question.
Actually,
Was there more?
wasn't there the part about the
Black Mirror.
Oh, Black Mirror, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Black Mirror came from, I guess, when I was at PokerStars. PokerStars were very good at identifying my skill set and identifying what I was not good at. So they were very good at identifying I'm good with people, building relationships. And I was always quite innovative in terms of trying to think of new ideas. So when I was at PokerStars, I wanted us to create a new game show, basically. I thought it'd be a great idea to have a TV game show, maybe, I think it was on ITV. So I arranged to go to ITV to meet the creator of Deal or No Deal, the creator of that game show. And the person who introduced me at ITV, 4 years passed, and then he reached out to me because we formed that relationship. I do keep in contact with people. And then he just said to me, well, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I'm working on comic books. And he just said, you know, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to find IP. And then he gave us an opportunity to present our work to a number of license holders, because that's the industry he was in. So we asked him if he could make an introduction for us, specifically to the team at Black Mirror, because our work is likened to Black Mirror. So a lot of feedback we get at Comic Cons is, this reminds me of Black Mirror. So we approached Black Mirror through this introduction partner. We presented our work, and thankfully they read it and said, this is really cool. Basically, you are the right people to make our comic book. And yeah, then we secured the deal. But it was a long process of knowing someone for 5 years, building up that trust in that person. So he will introduce us to the right people. And then it was a process in terms of getting to know them, showing them that we're the right people for that license. And then, you know, proving our worth, I guess, in terms of building that relationship. So that's how we got the deal with Black Mirror. Does that answer your question? Cool.
I'm aware that probably most people in the audience and online are watching this know what Black Mirror is, but I don't know if you want to talk about, because I know you've said it's likened, but there's maybe some people that are not aware of the connection between Twisted Comics and Black Mirror.
Yeah. So for me, Black Mirror is a very, very cool TV show. You can watch it on Netflix. There's a lot of different storylines that have something unique in them, I would say. It's a very popular show. I don't know, it's every episode is unique in its own way. And I would say every episode tries to challenge the audience in some way, in terms of doing something very innovative with its storyline or its technology. It's obviously created by Charlie Brooker as part of the creative team who made it. And And yeah, he's got a great mind in terms of telling stories if you want. So I do recommend checking it out if you can. And yeah, the challenging storylines make you think, very provocative, and yeah, just find it on Netflix. I would say it's a hit Netflix TV show. That's what Black Mirror is.
Yeah, and I am just going to add to that for some people I know that are joining that are not like that the Black Mirror is, I would say, more like, I guess, somewhat of a dystopian, like is specific to technology is what's in every episode, and it is called Black Mirror because it's a reference to when your screens go black. So we do actually have a question in. How did you discover comics as a kid?
Sure. So I've never discovered comics as a kid, is the honest answer. So I never read a comic until I was probably 37 when I made the first one, if you want. So I struggled to read. I don't really read that much. I just don't have that attention span, or for whatever reason. It's one of the reasons I struggled at school. But at school, I did read the odd story that interested me. So my awareness of comics only happened when I was 37. And when I made the first comic book, it wasn't because I was interested in comics. It was because I was interested in helping the students, I guess. It was like, what do you want to do? What's your skill set? And then I said, well, why don't we make a comic? I just thought it would be fun and interesting to do. So I'd say the more I've learned about comics is there's this misconception of what comics are. So a lot of people think comics are for kids, but they're not all for kids. Well, I would say our comics are more for mature audience. I probably wouldn't actually recommend anybody under 15 to read our comics. There's a misconception about comics in terms of they're only for kids, but I would just respond to that to say, when I was 6, I used to watch cartoons like Dogtanian and Willy Fogg. But now I'm an adult, I don't watch those types of cartoons anymore. I have my own sort of type of criteria of TV shows that I watch. Same with music. Like when I was a young kid, I just listened to, I don't know, just like terrible songs like MC Hammer, whatever it is. But now I'm more mature. I have a different type of music that I listen to, if you want, more like Radiohead or LCD Sound System. So it's the same with comics. When you're a kid, you might read a young comic, but as an adult, there's an older type of comic you can read, basically, with thought-provoking stories. And yeah, so I didn't read a comic until I was 37.
Interesting. Do we have any more questions from the room? Oh, okay. Here we go. Stephen. There we go. Let me turn this over to you.
Thank you. So as a parent, I've also got my eldest son, he's 14. And like you, he's quite creative. He's very much hands-on rather than educational. So he's very much into his football, into his gym, anything physical he will do, but educational he really struggles with. So he's still helping out schools.
Founder of the company, we actually connected over that education element. If you want, we want to help educate people, get more people reading and creating comics. And Neil was really keen on sort of how we can use comics to help actually teach kids as well. So we've done some research in terms of you're more likely to remember something if you read it with a visual in a comic, if you want. So one thing we want to do when we're at a point where we're sustainable is to actually create comics that help people with education. So for example, we did approach Formula One a number of years ago, and we sort of had an idea to create a comic book. There's a difference depending on what we would do with them, but from my point of view, I wanted to create a comic book where it would make reading a story fun, but also educating about aerodynamics and STEM within that comic book. So, for example, let's say there's a really cool scene where a car goes around a corner, but you could have a pop out that talks about why the aerodynamics are helping the car. Like, we haven't worked out yet how best to do it, but we want to sort of merge education with comics in some way. So right now, a lot of our comics actually educate about a lot of mental health, if you want. So embedded within the stories, there are stories about certain conditions if you wanted to. For example, we sat once with a kid who suffered from bullying, and we would say to him, like, you know, how can we help with this, basically? And he would tell a story about it. He would share his experiences, and we would say, would you want us to put this in a comic book for you? And we did, and it helped that person. Like, you know, so we tried to help people via comic books. And yeah, there's a whole area of things I think we can do with education. It's just about the right timing and how we do it. Because for me, I struggled at school. I'm not saying it's the school's fault. I learned differently. And it's got to be very tricky to cater to everyone's individual need at school, if you want. There has to be some sort of standard education. I get that. But it's about how do we help the people that don't fit into that standard education? And what can we do with comics to do that at some point? So, yeah, I'm always happy to help kids in the Isle of Man and students if I can. And yeah, just need to reach out and we can try to do something together. But I don't know how to make that happen, is the honest answer as well. We would love to do something. How do we do that? I don't really know. I can come up with ideas, but it's just about, again, finding the budget to do it and the time, basically, and the resource to actually commit to it. Does that answer the question? Yeah. I'm pretty sure is it your son? He'll be great. Don't worry about honestly, it's like you learn so much from school. Even if you're not studying or doing whatever, you're learning personnel skills. You're learning, if he's into football, you'll be learning about how to deal with teams and conflict within the team. And there's just so much about just dealing with people, basically, that is much, for me personally, much better for how to survive in this world, if I'm honest.
Do we have any other questions in the room? Oh, of course. Ms. Sarah Ennett. Let me pass this over to you.
Thank you very much. My name's Sarah. I work in helping people upskill in AI, and I'm just wondering how much AI is touching your industry at the moment and what your thoughts are and where it's going in the future. That would be really interesting to hear.
Cool. So how is AI touching our industry and where will it go in the future? So yeah, so for me, I think there's two ways of looking at AI, if you want. Let's take, for example, a number of years ago, what's that? The software that got introduced, Photoshop or something like, there's like, you know, different tools. So it's like when that came out, it was like, this is going to take away jobs, etc. But it did happen. Does that make sense? It became a tool that people now use and are skilled with to actually, you know, be more creative as well. I do think AI will do the same thing if you want, but it's just about how we use it fairly and rightly, I guess, if you want. So for our industry, we don't use AI right now in terms of hiring. All our art is done by artists. It's all done by, well, people. People are artists, aren't they? It's all done by people. And there's a reason why we do that, is because we like the teamwork. We like the human spirit, if you want, of, you know, speaking with people and finding out what can we put into this to make it something unique and new, I guess, which is the passion of ours. So I don't think I'd be in the industry if it was relying on a computer to do it, because it's just not fun for me. You know, I enjoy spending time with people and what can we do. But I do think there'll be a space for it in terms of helping educate people, if you want. So, for example, if there's somebody in here that hasn't got any creative skill set or can't create art for whatever reason, maybe it can help them as well. So I get that it allows people to be creative, which I don't think should be discouraged. I just think you always need to honor the ownership of the art, basically, who originally created the art. That needs to be recognized. And I think the industry probably needs to find a way of making sure they get recognition and compensation, if you want. That's not for me to work out how to do that. I haven't got a clue. But I just think people should be aware of it. It exists. It's going to become more prevalent within the industry. And how do we regulate it, I guess, properly? And how do we, just keep creativity within people? I personally don't want to be in a world where creativity is taken away from somebody because a computer can do it for them. So we just need to sort of, just educate people about how to use it properly and don't let it do all the work for us, I guess. Does that answer the question? Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Sarah. So we are going to go to a question online. This is from Jay Bishop on YouTube. I'm a 2D broadcast animator currently in the UK. Is Kenny aware of any animation opportunities on the Isle of Man?
So I know there are some animation companies here. I want to say Flix is here. So there are a number of animation students here because I know of that very first comic book I created, there was working with 3 students. And I know 2 of them went to work for animation studios on the Isle of Man. So I can't say specifically what those studios do. I don't know if they're the business side or the actual creation side. That's just from me not knowing, if you want. I know but having said that, even though I'm on the Isle of Man, I still deal with animation studios, if you want. So I have a lot of connections throughout the world in that area. I'm always being introduced to animation studios, large and small. And I would just say being on the Isle of Man doesn't prevent you from meeting those companies, I guess. But there are some on the Isle of Man. I'm not too sure who they are, but I do know some people in the Isle of Man that work in that area. I know there's a lot of creative people in the Isle of Man who want to make animations, want to make short movies, want to make films, and they do it, basically. So there must be the skill set here to do that. But it probably comes from meeting the right people and putting yourself out there, basically, to let yourself be known. Sorry if that doesn't answer the question. It's just I'm not too familiar too much.
No, hopefully that answers the question for Jay Bishop. Are there any more questions in the room? Anyone? No? Not any? Okay. Oh, there we go. All right.
Nice.
So,
Thanks.
what are some of the challenges about managing creativity and overlapping it with business?
Okay, just repeat the question.
So what are the challenges? The question is, so what are the challenges with managing creativity with overlapping with the business? Yeah. So lots is the short answer. And you need to be very patient with people and understand people and understand their priorities. So I'll give you just one quick example of it if it helps. So let's say there's a business need. So let's say you're running a marketing campaign or a social campaign, and within the business, like if we're working for a brand, you have to get these creative assets approved if you wanted to. So before you put it live, you get them approved. And then you have your schedule put in place, the date it's going to go out. But then let's say for argument's sake, you plan for that creative asset to go out a week on Friday. Great. But then maybe the business comes back of, actually, this asset's not approved, for whatever reason. And then to change that asset in a comic book, it's dealing with 4 people. So not one person makes the image. You'll have the inker, the artist, the colorer, the letterer, and then some of them maybe formats it all. So you have to then go to 4 people to change an image. And then you'll have your business side saying, well, we need this image quite quickly. Then we're like, well, that's great, but I need to go to 4 different people to get one simple thing changed, then send that back to get approved. And that might take 2 to 3 weeks if you want. It's also, from my experience, creative people and business people have different skill sets, different ways of communicating, different visions of what success is. And then, so you might have someone who is like in the marketing team, so actually this image doesn't work. And you go back to the creative person and they'll be like, well, I don't want to change my image. Like, this image is great for me. Why would you change this for the marketing purposes? Because I'm actually going to give you a worse image. But there might be a reason why the marketing team want an image in a specific way, because maybe they wanted the colors to be specific or the branding to be specific. So it's just a lot of really negotiating between teams to get everybody on the same page. And it sometimes requires lots of compromise, asking for forgiveness, and just asking people to get on with it at the same time.
So the question in the room, and actually that came in online, was, have you met Charlie Brooker?
So the answer is no, but obviously I would like to. So part of my role within the company is, I guess, business development, if you want, like doing the licensing deals. So I'll deal more with the license holders. Yeah, it'd be great to meet him. I'd have so many questions for him. I think the first question would be, we hope you've honored your work, basically. That's what we set out to do, is try to create a very authentic representation of what he wanted to create. Yeah, I've been told, not directly, but I've been told he has seen our work, basically, because he's involved, in sort of looking at what we do. And yeah, I've been told he likes it. I hope that's true. I can't say because I've never met him, but it'd be great to meet him, basically. I'd love to pitch to him or talk to him about, how great his vision is and what we can do to help that as well, basically, in terms of how we can help.
Awesome. All right. So the other question is, how big is this Netflix deal for the Isle of Man? And what is the advice you can give anyone who would like to go beyond the island with their ideas?
I don't know how big it is, like, for the Isle of Man. So the question is, how big is this deal for the Isle of Man? I don't know, if you want. I guess maybe from some ways, maybe I've always had in mind helping the Isle of Man, if you want. Like, I would love one day to have a comic shop here. And I would love one day to have a studio here with artists. And I would love to, have a team dedicated on the Isle of Man to working on great IP and creating just great content. To do that, you need resources, you need team, you need skill sets. So for me, I would love for our company to get to that point where we can do that, basically. And I guess that comes down to the team that we have, the great team that we have with Twisted Comics, making it a success, and then trying to spread that success on the Isle of Man however we can. Like, I do think the Isle of Man is capable of having that vision and building that framework to work on big IPs. I do think we have the skill set here to create great comic books. We have the skill set to run a major company within this space and this arena. So if I can be part of the team that helps achieve that, amazing, basically. And I would love to do that. But as I said at the start, I'm not about achieving success. I want success, don't get me wrong, but I just don't need it tomorrow. I think a lot of people are, I don't know, for whatever reason, so focused on being successful tomorrow, which just isn't right in my mind. So let's just build the foundations of the company, then see how we can help the Isle of Man. In fact, I would love one day to make a film, have the premiere on the Isle of Man. So that's what I would. That's something that motivates me. I would love to do that. And I would just make it on the Isle of Man. I'll make it the Palace Cinema on purpose. Just there, not in London or anywhere like that. Make all the stars come to the Isle of Man. That's what I would do.
Oh, that's the second part of the question.
Oh, which was
if someone had an idea that they'd want that's on the Isle of Man for it to go beyond the island.
Okay, so if someone had an idea on the Isle of Man, they wanted to go beyond the Isle of Man, I guess it depends on, first of all, what that idea is. I would say a lot of creative ideas can obviously go beyond the Isle of Man, because I can't really think of anything creative that would just be fixed to the Isle of Man. So, for example, let's just, for argument's sake, we are speaking to somebody who wants to make a comic book based on the myths of the Isle of Man. If you create a great product, no matter what it is, and you'll stay true to your heritage and culture, then you surprisingly find that other cultures want to also find out about that. So as long as you're creating a good product, then people all around the world will want that good product if you want. So there is the opportunity to go around the Isle of Man. As I said, I've done everything from the Isle of Man. If you want, it does take the odd trip to England or the odd conference that I go to, but the Isle of Man hasn't restricted me in terms of speaking to a number of actors. We ended up doing a job for the producers of a film called Terminator and Aliens. I don't know, so we worked for them. We were able to work with Universal to get Lucky Man IP, which was from Stan Lee. Like, we've been able to speak to a lot of major brands if you want. So it doesn't restrict you. It's just what you make of it, basically. Nowhere should restrict you, I don't think.
All right. So let me just check to see before we go back online. We'll take one last question from the room. If anyone has a question. Anyone? No.
Someone had a question, but they haven't asked. I wouldn't point them out, but someone said, "Prior, I've got a question for
Okay.
you, not asked, but maybe
All right.
it was asked."
So there is a question online that was also submitted. So this is anonymous, but I am going to take the moment to give a little shout out for people online. So people in the room may not be aware that this event was put together with the IOM collaborative community. One of the people that I do want to give credit to, I think I've mentioned this to Kenny, is someone I went to high school with. His name is Richard Diack. Yeah. We both, believe, took comic book literature in high school. Richard, you've probably never heard of him, is a writer, but he has worked with DC, Marvel, Spider-Man projects. His latest one is Venom. So he actually had a question for Kenny, which happened to be the same question that's being submitted, which is, tell us about this Kickstarter gig and the things that you have to go through to make it successful. The reason that I'm pointing that out to you is because I think a lot of the questions coming in have to do with Isle of Man and then trying to make it somewhere. Yeah. Whereas in the context of someone asking here and someone asking, going back to what you consider to be success, he was very interested in learning about Kenny's experience because there are creative projects that he wants to do on his own that he doesn't necessarily want tied to a DC or a Marvel. Yeah. So.
Yes, the question is related to Kickstarter and how that helped us and sort of our experience with it. So for those that don't understand, Kickstarter is a platform where we see it as a pre-sale tool. So when Kickstarter started out, it was actually a platform that people would go to raise money to create a product if you wanted. So when our company started, we had no money. We would kickstart our projects. We would go to an audience and say, we want to make this comic book. You can get a pre-sale. We would then use those funds to make the comic book. But as we became more successful, what we actually found was for ourselves that Kickstarter had a really unique audience of comic fans. So then we changed our model to be, we would make the comic book and then sell it on Kickstarter for pre-sales if you wanted. So we don't use Kickstarter to fund the products anymore. We use them as pre-sales. The reason why is on Kickstarter, it's really cool. It's almost like you can give away unique offerings on Kickstarter. So, for example, when we did USS Callister, we also had a tier where you can get the pin badge as well, or you can get a separate poster, or someone could buy one copy where we had a unique cover, basically, that someone could get that as a collectible. So it's a really good tool, Kickstarter, for people to raise money if you don't have that position where you can actually afford it yourself. And it's a really cool opportunity to distribute your comic. For example, if you're selling your comic in a shop or online, they might take 60% commission. But on Kickstarter, they take around about 8% if you want. So it's actually cheaper for us to sell it on Kickstarter than a shop. We also we find a lot of the audience we grew up with we're Kickstarter fans, so we were staying true to our fan base as the company grew. We just met a lot of people that would collect things via Kickstarter, so we would go to that audience because that's where our audience was. And also the people on Kickstarter are always trying to find the next cool thing, basically, to buy. So we see it as like the first stage of selling a comic book, maybe the first 5%. So you can sell your book there, then take it to the shops, take it online, take it to your website. And it's a great platform to test products too, because Kickstarter kind of has a platform where you can set a target that you need to reach, basically. And if you don't reach that target, you don't have to make it. So you can gauge interest in your product. I would say there's one learning I had with Kickstarter. So when you sign up with a big brand, which we have done, people just assume you've made it, basically. If you want, they assume that you have all the money in the world. So we're still an indie comic book company, basically. We still work very hard. We invest a lot of time and resources into products. Yeah, but we still rely on fans, basically, to grow our company, basically. So we would get some interesting, some advice to pass on. We would get some comments as to, why are you running a Kickstarter? You must be a millionaire. You've got the Black Mirror brand. And I'm like, nah, like, I'm just not, basically. Like, we need to survive, basically. We have a team, a great team, and a huge team of volunteers, and we try to reward those volunteers. We wouldn't be where we are today without volunteers, and we want to sort of stop paying everybody properly, is the reality. So there could be a misconception of, hey, you've got Black Mirror, you must be a millionaire. I'm like, nah, that's just not the case. So so make sure you communicate properly your product, and evaluate where you are as a company before using it, and then don't be upset when people kind of think you should be a millionaire and paying for it yourself, basically. Yeah.
All right. And with that, we are going to close the live stream portion of the event. Thank you so much, Kenny, for taking the time out to sit with us, and Shamara and Launchpad, and everyone here for coming in. We're going to hope to try to do more of these collaborative events in the future. And so we're closing to go back to networking and in-person refreshments and pizza. Right?